Welcome back to the Generating Alpha podcast. I'm Amir.
And I'm Owen. We're the co-founders of Generating Alpha.
Today, we had the true honor of sitting down with Alan Patricof, a true pioneer in the world of venture capital. Widely credited as one of the first venture capitalists in history, Alan has played a pivotal role in shaping the industry over the past 5 decades.
Alan began his career after getting degrees from Ohio State University, which won the national championship for football this year. Congrats to them. And Columbia Business School. And in 1969, he founded Alan Patricof Associates, one of the first venture capital firms in the United States. That later evolved into APAX Partners, which became one of the largest private equity firms in the world. Through APAX, he was an early investor in companies like Apple, AOL, and Office Depot.
In 2006, he founded Greycroft along Dana Settle and Ian Sigalow, focusing on early stage media investments in companies such as the Huffington Post and Venmo. Then, at age 85, he launched Primetime Partners with Abby Levy, a fund dedicated in investing in businesses that serve the aging population.
Now at 90 years old, Alan remains sharp and engaged, continuing to push boundaries in both businesses and life. In this episode, we deep dive into his remarkable career, his insights on venture capital, advice for entrepreneurs, and perspectives on longevity. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you. All right, so let's start all the way at the beginning, Alan. Where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
It's a big question. I grew up in Manhattan, on the west side of Manhattan, and I went to high school. Actually, the high school Horace Mann, which you may know, the school was actually at that time was a boys' school. It's now co-ed, and I lived a typical life of a young kid growing up. And Central Park was my playground. At those days, we had big snowfalls, which you would not. It's inconceivable today to realize that in those days the snow could be so heavy that your car could be snowed in for the whole winter. And so we would use the park for bike riding, for roller skating, for snow sledding. That was where and frankly, my sons have grown up on the east side, but they also use Central Park as their playground. Yeah. And my grandchildren, not all of them, but 5 of the 7 live in New York, and for them, Central Park is their playground. So we've been a New York family since day one, and my parents lived in New York.
Yep. Yeah, true New York.
Yep.
My parents were immigrants. They had come, one from Belarus and the other one from outside Kiev in Ukraine.
Wow.
They came over here. My father came in 1907, and my mother came in 1910. So I guess you'd say the first generation born in.
Yeah.
And did your parents do anything? What did your parents do?
My father was a stockbroker, and my mother was a housewife.
Wow. Incredible story here. Did you have any dreams of what you wanted to do as a child?
Not really. I didn't think about it. I think I was thinking about the next party night.
Yeah. Did you have like any sports interests or?
I played football when I was in high school, and on the second string, not first string. And but I was head of not the Horace Mann paper, but there was an inter-school paper at that time, and it was called the Inter-School Record, and it was made up of all the private schools in New York. And I was, I don't know, I guess you'd call it editor or whatever I was. I was the head of it with a woman who actually is a state senator now.
Oh, wow. Look at that. And during your teenage years, did you have any early jobs or entrepreneurial ventures?
Honestly, I grew up during World War II. And so the jobs I had at that time they weren't jobs, but it seems archaic, but I collected newspapers at that time for the war effort. I collected tin cans for the war effort because everything was reused at that time. And I sold savings bonds because that was a big way of funding the war effort. And in the summers, when I was, I guess, I'm not sure what my driving age was, but I think maybe it was just in my senior year, I was I was a camp counselor for several years, but I think in my senior year summer, I took care of two kids out in Long Island for the summer. But that's all I can. I basically remember when I got into college. I had a lot of jobs.
Wow. Yeah, I think we all both have a lot of jobs here. It's still the same thing. So you went to Ohio State and Columbia Business School. Did you have any important lessons you learned from that time period?
That's a big question. I mean, I can't say I specifically have lessons from being in college or business school. I think you pick up lessons as you go through life and your career, more likely. There really aren't enough opportunities to get lessons from your time in when you're schooling. But along the way afterwards, in the profession I'm in, I've learned about how to deal with people and how to. Most importantly, I don't know if you've read my book, or if I had a copy, I'd show you. It's called No Red Lights. It's how I've led my life, which is always having a great sense of curiosity. I mean, you didn't learn that. Either you're born with that or you don't have it. And I have always had a great sense of curiosity and a willingness to participate in whatever opportunity came my way or go looking for opportunities. And I think I probably started that in my high school with some of the activities I just told you about, which you didn't have to do that. You could just have gone to school. And later on with a lot of the things I did in life, whether it was in the theater or in the art business or whether it was a music business or whatever it was, I was very open to opportunities that came my way. And if they didn't necessarily come my way, I went looking for them. But I think, one of the problems with young people particularly is that they get very singular and monochromatic in what they do, and they become lawyers and all they do is do briefs all day. And if they're financial people, all they do is spreadsheets. And I've always been very open to philanthropy, to art collecting, to car collecting, to traveling abroad. But I always was focused on it came naturally because of my curiosity and because of my entrepreneurial spirit and because of my just doing what I like to do. I've always been open and tried to do new things with no red lights.
Yeah. So you got drafted in the Army. I think it was 58, whatever. What was your experience like?
Well, actually, I was in the Army twice. I went in the Army in 1958 after I'd gotten out of college. And what they had then was a 6-month program. You went to the Army for 6 months and then you served in the reserves for 7 years. That meant as part of the reserves, you went every week, one night a week, to a training base in New York and 2 weeks in the summer. And I did that because the alternative was going 2 years into the Army. And I thought this was a better way to build a business career. At the same time, I fulfilled my Army obligations. And I had the bad luck of 1961. President Kennedy called back the reserves into active duty. So I ended up spending another year in the Army. So I ended up spending about 18 months in the military. I wish they had a draft today. I think it was a great experience for anyone to be in the Army for a period of time.
Many people learn discipline in the Army. Did you learn any sort of discipline? Did you put into
I can't say specifically, but the Army helps you build certain characteristics of getting along with people who have totally different economic backgrounds, living in a different place, learning to follow discipline and understanding, that you're part of a group in a company. It's called a company. They're broken down into companies, training regiments, and you're not your own person when you're in the Army. And I think those are all good traits you pick up along the way. And I think that it's a shame that every young person, including the two of you, don't serve for a period of time in the military. You don't have to make it your career, but I think we'd be a lot better off if everyone had, if there was compulsory military service.
Yeah. And after the Army, what was your first job in the investment industry, and how did you get into it?
Did you read my book?
We did not. We heard of it, but we booked this on short notice, so we didn't have time.
Okay. No, the reason is in my book, No Red Lights, a lot of discussion about my getting a job, because I went to Ohio State. I didn't go to Yale and Harvard, Princeton. So not that that would have made that big a difference, but if you went to Ohio State, there was no recruiting from Wall Street out in Ohio to come back to New York. So when I graduated and I wanted to go in the finance business, I literally started at one end of Wall Street and walked building to building. In those days, you could get into any building without security. I'd ride the elevator to the top and then walk down the stairs and at each floor ask if they had the job openings, because there were no headhunters or recruiters or training programs at all the fancy investment banks. And I was lucky enough after I started, I think, 120 Wall Street. By the time I got to 63 Wall Street, which took a couple of months, I found a firm that actually had a job opening, and I worked for them for a couple of years, which was great opportunity for me, and started my whole career in the finance business. So it was a hard way to start. People today do recruiting. I have a grandson who's at college right now, and he's only, I guess he's the mid stage of his sophomore year. And investment banking firms are already recruiting this year for, I guess it's summer of his junior year. And if that works out, then he has a job when he graduates. And he's been spending the last month or last couple of weeks prepping for these interviews. We didn't have that luxury. As I say, I graduated without a job.
Yeah.
Yep. So you were a big player in the venture capital area. When did you realize you wanted to pursue that career?
Well, I started out in a different end of the investment business. I started out in investment management, which I really liked. I worked for a couple of different organizations, advisory work, and ultimately worked for a family group, not my family. And I recognized when I was working at that family that everybody was focused on their public portfolio. Yet, as a family group, occasionally, every once in a while, someone would send a private deal in, and they would end up taking a little piece, whether it was $100,000 or $500,000, and then everybody would forget about it. They'd put it in a file drawer. You wouldn't even know what a file drawer is today. And no one would really pay attention to it because it was a private company. It didn't report. And I got very interested in that area. And as part of what I was doing in the public markets, and while I was in my this job for this family office, I ended up looking at a private investment in a new magazine called New York Magazine, which has become very famous. And I became chairman of the board of that. I invested in a medical electronics company, which was a great success. And I invested in a company in the cable and television and radio business. All three, it doesn't usually work that way, but they were all three early stage investments, and all three ended up very successful. And I said, I like this idea of working with private companies. I feel very close to it. I know what's happening because I'm really closely involved. And I said, there's a real opportunity in the family office business where every family office, and there were many, are focused on their investment portfolios. And everyone had a file drawer with a lot of private deals in it. And I said, I'm going to start a firm to and go after family offices as my clients and manage their private portfolios so they don't have to even think about it. And that's how I started that was the basis of starting my first firm.
And if I'm correct, that the kind of merger of those three companies was called, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, Aeneid Equities or?
No, you're mixing things. Aeneid Equities was the company that owned New York Magazine.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that's not my firm. I started a firm called Alan Patricof Associates.
Yeah.
And that over a period of 10 or 15 years got bigger. It grew from New York to California, and then it started in London and Paris, and then Munich,
yeah,
Madrid. And when we got to about 12 countries, we decided to change the name from Alan Patricof Associates, APA. We added an X, and it became APAX. And
yeah.
That's the company that survives today. It's one of the biggest private equity firms in the country today.
And if I'm correct, Aeneid, separately, the New York Magazine one was public. So you were pretty early in your career at that point. What was it like to chair a public company that earlier in your career?
I don't know. I ran board meetings. I was also chairman of a company called Datascope, and that became public. There was nothing. A chairman, really, for the most part, unless you're an active chairman, but if you're an executive chairman, you really officiated board meetings. So I wasn't active in any of those companies, except to guide it through a board role.
Okay, yeah, yep. And moving on to, as you said, Alan Patricof Associates, which became APAX. What led you to found APAX, and how did your vision evolve over time?
Well, as I told you, I
Yeah.
started Alan Patricof Associates to service primarily family groups. It expanded from there. I ended up starting in what they call a small business investment company, an SBIC, and then I started raising. I grew from just family offices to institutional investors, and I probably was the first person to open up an operation in Europe, and saw that opportunity, which the European market was really nascent because the Europeans were not really very big risk takers. I don't know how much they are today, but the reason the venture capital business is so successful in this country is we're a country of entrepreneurs and risk takers. In England, if you started a company and it failed, you probably couldn't get another job. And in order to start a company, you probably left a company where you had a contract of employment. If you were high enough, you had a car and driver, a pension fund, and they were not inclined. There was no public markets. So Europe did not have a huge entrepreneurial spirit. And even today, I mean, the United States is the heart of entrepreneurism in the world. Although it's happening every place, this is still the heart of it.
How did APAX transition from a venture capital firm to a private equity firm, and why did you do that?
That's a very good question, really. I didn't take it from that. As we acquired and merged in these European interests, because they didn't have venture capital and they were experimenting with it, they increasingly leaned towards later stage deals, which were safer and where it was more based on numbers than on technology or extrapolation of market opportunities. And so the firm gravitated more and more to later stage deals and eventually became almost entirely a private equity firm. And it was one of the reasons why in 2001, after the bloodbath of the bubble, that I said, I don't want to really do this. I want to do something else. And I decided to take some time off and do something else with my life. So I left APAX behind, which was frankly a gold mine. But I loved dealing with young companies, and I could see we were doing less and less, and there was less interest. And I then spent several years working in international development for the IFC, part of the World Bank, and traveled around Africa, Southeast Asia, and a little bit Latin America, and primarily in Africa, and spent several years trying to build entrepreneurial activities and angel groups in several of these countries. And in 2006, I decided it was time to go back in the venture capital business, and I started a venture capital firm. So I went back to where I had been in 1970, and I started Greycroft, which was named after a house I have in East Hampton, Long Island, which was built in 1894. Everyone thinks I named the house after the firm. I really named the firm after the house. And we were focused primarily in internet and media investments. And that firm now manages about $3 billion. APAX manages about $83 billion. So it's much bigger. And frankly, Greycroft has started to slide into the private equity business from venture. Although they're still doing venture, in fact, they have recently morphed into an AI business for early stage investments. But I decided about 4 years ago that it was time for me to do something else. And I decided to start my third firm, which is where I'm at now, which is a firm called Primetime Partners. And if you were older or whatever, you perhaps get it when I started why we call the firm Primetime, because I have the thesis that people in their 60s are really in their prime time. And the focus of Primetime is to invest in products, services, and technologies that relate to the ageless generation, because people don't realize the fastest growing part of the economy, the population, are people over 60. There'll be more people over 60 in 10 years than there will be under 18. So it's an increasing area with lots of needs that are only getting bigger. And so for the last 4 years, I'm in my third incarnation. And by the way, I started the first firm alone, but I brought in very shortly a woman partner. I started Greycroft with a woman partner, and I started Primetime with a woman partner. So I've always been a very strong supporter of women in the venture business and women entrepreneurs, where I think there's a lot of opportunities. So now I'm still, I was 90 years old 2 months ago, and I am still, you're reaching me at whatever time it is today. I work full time at Primetime.
Yep.
If you read anything about me, I ran the marathon 2 years ago. I went to Burning Man. I flew in a parachute over a Gulf of Mexico, which is going to be called the Gulf of America.
Apparently,
if the president has his way. And I've, as I said to you, I have a great curiosity, and I've done a lot of eclectic things in my life. And that's why I decided to write this book, No Red Lights, to really encourage young people to think broadly, don't get caught in one vertical area, but be expansive and opportunistic to build an interesting life and career. Secondarily, I wrote it for older people who are thinking of retiring at age 60, of which there are a lot of them. And if they read my book, I'm going to live to 114. And most people who know me would not doubt that. And just try walking down the street with me and see if you can keep up.
Yep.
I live a very active life, and so I wanted to inspire older people at 60 to think about the fact that you probably have only lived half your life. What are you going to do with the next half of your life? So it was a, you might call it a bifurcated objective when I wrote the book, for younger people and for older people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you built $2 billion investment firms over your career. What do you think are some of the keys to their success?
I think having an instinctive quality for good leaders, understanding markets, and understanding economics, and understand valuations of, you can have something terrific, but we're right now in a euphoric moment for AI companies. I've seen this play 10 times already. I've seen it in the personal computer. I saw it in the cell phone industry. I saw it in the storage industry, the internet, and it has a way of going through euphoric moments when people end up overpricing a lot of companies. And there are obviously always winners, but there are also a lot of losers in the process. And we're going through a major revolution right now in AI, which is going to have some very positive benefits in almost every area, whether it's education or health or longevity. And there will be some successes, but we've had some extreme valuations in the last year, and would suggest to me that, not everybody's going to come out of this with a smile on their face.
Yeah. And talking about computers, you were one of Apple's earliest investors. How did that deal come about, and why did you decide to invest?
Truthfully, and I've been honest with anybody, I was lucky. It was not, I saw the personal computer revolution coming. I had been knowledgeable about Commodore business machines, which was one of the leaders. Texas Instruments was one of the leaders. And I heard about this company in California, and I happened to get an opportunity to buy, it was the second round, and had one meeting over the phone, not over Zoom, over the phone, with Steve Jobs, and who didn't try very hard to sell me and making an investment. And I made a modest investment because I had a very modest fund at that time. And I, in my book, say that we made a $315,000, which was worth today $7 billion. I'm speaking that at Georgetown next week or the week after, and the guys put it together, setting up what the conversation would be. Say, just for your information, I did the computation, and now it would be worth $10 billion. So 315,000 has gone a long way, but you had to sit with it for 40 years, and you had to go through a lot of ups and downs. And the venture business is not meant for holding things for 40 years. Your investors want you to give liquidity. So we ended up distributing the stock in the 80s. So we did not realize anything like that return.
Apple's so successful today. Like, for example, we're filming this on a Apple computer. I have an iPhone.
Yeah, well, I have my iPhone and I'm on an iPad. But how would you feel?
I have the whole Apple ecosystem now.
How would you feel if you were me and you go into an Apple store and you have to wait online in an appointment for the Genius Bar? They haven't got the slightest idea who I am.
Yeah.
Makes no difference.
So, what are some important qualities you look for making potential investments?
As I said to you, leadership is key. Everything starts with the tone at the top. If you've got a great leader, they can have a second-rate product, but they'll do something to fix it. If you have the greatest product in the world with a second-rate leader, they don't know what to do with it, and they probably won't realize its full potential. So I think that comes first and foremost. And the second is understanding the economics of the business and what it takes to make a profit, and whether the company in question has the ingredients to turn a profit, and understanding how much capital is required to make it profitable. So these are all, and at the end of the day, it's an art, not a science, and you have to make a judgment call. And I specialize in early stage deals, and we have a lot of mistakes, I can tell you. But you hope there'll be some winners.
Yeah.
Make up for the losses.
And you built both Greycroft and Primetime as partnerships. What do you think are the keys to building a successful partnership?
I would say the key for me is sharing. That doesn't mean necessarily, it means sharing the economics. That's one thing. But more than that is having a partner, having partners, and making them feel that they're part of something, a total effort, and not a one-man band. I've seen more firms fall apart because of the politics that develop internally, and how people can't realize their potential, and they go start something else. I have been very fortunate. I've virtually had nobody leave a firm that I was involved with. Certainly, no one left on bad terms and quit. Several people did leave ultimately to start their own firms because they had that urge to become entrepreneurs. But I think I'm a big believer in partnership rather than a one-man band. So you want to avoid politics, and I think treating people fairly and inclusively is a great way to build the core of a firm and keep continuity. I mean, it's not bad when you think about the fact of all the firms that have gone out of business since I started in 1970, and APAX is now in its 55th year. That's pretty impressive that it survived me, it survived the next generation. It's now in the third management. Greycroft, the two young partners I brought in, are running it today without me. And Primetime will definitely survive me.
Yeah.
I have a great woman partner.
And one last question that we ask all of our guests at the end of every episode. Go ahead, Owen.
So if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
I would say that, remember, everything in life is cumulative. What you're doing today, what you did in, maybe not so much elementary school, but it all builds on a foundation that gets bigger and bigger and broader. And in the process, you're building a reputation. And whatever reputation you build stays with you.
Yeah.
I walk down the street all the time. I walk to work every day. I live on 76th Street. My office is 56, and I'm still chairman emeritus at Greycroft, and that's down at 42nd Street. So I'm using that as an illustration. And there's virtually not one single day when I don't have someone walk up to me and say, always the same, always, you don't remember me, but you gave me my first job. You don't remember me, but no one else took my phone call. You took my phone call. You don't remember me, but you referred me to someone who gave me my order. You don't remember me. You were my first investor. It's always the same. You don't remember me, but I'm going to an event tonight, and I am certain, I've been in the office all day, someone will come up to me today and say, you don't remember me, but, when that used to happen, it's only started about 10 years ago. I had a lot of trepidation. You don't know when someone's going to come up to you and say, you don't remember me, but you screwed me. You don't remember me, but you fired me. And I would say honestly, and I guess it's in a way bragging, but it's being honest, and it's something I'm most proud of, is it's almost consistently positive. And I've told my sons, uh, I may not leave them as much money as a lot of people who built. If I'd stayed at APAC, certainly built, huge companies, but I have left them with a good reputation, and that reputation is in process right now for you, and it's still in process for me. Uh, you continually meet people, and I made a point of throughout my career of meeting people and going out of my way to help people and to be supportive and to I have when I my first wife, actually my second wife, my wife of 50 years passed away 4 years ago from Alzheimer's. She had Alzheimer's for 12 years, and I remarried someone I knew 50 years ago. And when I had my bachelor's party, instead of getting, my older friends and taking them away or going and doing something, I decided I would invite all the mentees I'd had over the last 50 years, who now are obviously in their 50s or 60s in many cases. And some of them are still working for me, or some of them worked for me last year. And I had 40 young people, 40, not all young. And, that's what makes me proud of building a reputation. So I would say that's an important thing to leave with any young person. And I also would say, read my book, No Red Lights. You'll get a lot of good ideas.
Yeah, we will.
It's got a green cover. No red lights, but it's a green cover.
Like that.
It's on Audible and it's available on Amazon.
I will. I'm going on a flight tonight, so I'll listen to it then.
That's the best time. I wrote it. It had 230 some odd pages. I wrote it so that someone could take it on a flight and finish it before they got to Los Angeles. Where are you going?
He's on a long one.
I'm going to Japan.
Well,
I'll finish it.
You'll probably fall asleep, but if it weren't for
I might
that,
read it too. I'm going to Paris tomorrow, so.
well, it depends which flight you're to be taking. The night flight? No, if you're taking the day flight.
Yeah, I'm taking a night one, so I
Yeah.
might just fall asleep.
But is this a spring break now?
We got a winter break.
Winter
coming up.
break.
Winter break. Okay. Well, it's nice talking with you. Good luck.
Thank you, Alan. We really appreciate you
Thank
taking
you.
the time.
All right, great. Good luck.
You too.
Thank you very much.
Bye.